Welcome to Bigfoot
and the Bunny.
This is a couple's journey into the mysterious,
the unknown, and the paranormal.
I'm your host, Chris Carr.
And I'm your host, Kristen Johnson.
Together we are Bigfoot and the Bunny.
And we're live. Welcome to Bigfoot and the Bunny. I'm your host, Chris Carr.
And I am Kristen Johnson.
We have cats in a room, so if you see something moving, it's probably not a shadow person, but a black cat named Poe. He's by my feet right now. Happy Saturday, guys.
Happy Saturday.
I hope you're doing good. Kristen's computer is basically on fire,
yeah.
So her chat moderation may not be so hot tonight, but we'll do our best
to
get to that stuff. What do you want to say? I wanted to say, give a shout out to our good friend Greg Koss, who had a season finale of the Shadow Hour last night. And we posted that. If you're not familiar with Shadow Hunters Paranormal, we give him a plug because we like him a lot. And we're on his other show, Metaphysical Crossings, pretty often on a rotation with some other folks, some really great people. We put those on our Facebook pages. Facebook.com/Bigfoot and the Bunny and Dark Horse Paranormal Productions. So do check those out. You know, you can see them there and it'll link you right back to his page. And Natalie Jones on last night. It was a finale. I guess he's taking like a month off. He's doing some traveling, some stuff. And
family stuff too.
Yeah, Natalie is part of the Dominion Ministries, which we're also part of. And we're getting to know some of the people. This is kind of big network of paranormal investigators, researchers, case managers, all kinds of cool folks, psychics, and all kinds of things going on there. It's kind of like an international network. It's kind of like IHOP for the paranormal. International House of Paranormal.
Oh, I like that.
There we go.
Is that a thing yet?
That's a thing.
All right, nobody check. That's ours.
Yeah, you can't steal that. We're going to copyright
it.
And I see Debbie Wallace-Hagen out there. Hello, Debbie. How you doing?
Debbie.
Happy Saturday. Hope you guys are having a good weekend, having a good time. Well, we're going to get right to things, I guess. We have a great guest for you guys this week. I'll tell you a little bit about her. Her name is Leigh Landon, and she's been on here before. She's a host of Ghost Ed for our pun people and pun family, Ghost Ed 101. She started her journey in the paranormal field more than 30 years ago as a teenager, and after multiple interactions with her grandfather, who had passed away many years prior. Throughout the years following, she has researched and traveled to locations in order to learn more about the history and paranormal claims. She holds a Doctor of Philosophy in Metaphysical Human Science, specializing in paranormal science. She is a Certified Paranormal Investigator, CPI, and Certified EVP Technician. We love EVPs on here.
Yes, we do.
Yes, we like to throw some theories around that. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Her goal is to help others take a more scientific approach to their paranormal investigations and research. So it sounds like she takes the woo out of things.
Ooh.
She's part of some other foundations. She also hosts the Warren Files, which is great, with Chris McKinnell. Talking about the Warren cases and such. Let's bring her on. We'll talk about it. Hey there, Heather.
Hey, Heather. Welcome
back.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So, yes, I just, if I abbreviated a few things, I figured we could talk about it on here with you.
That's fine. My bio is long, and I let you guys or whoever is hosting the show figure out what they want to share.
Yeah, I know we have that feeling too, with the guests. It's like we could say, send us a short bio, and they send us like 14 pages. Like, well, okay, we'll just do this part, and then when we go on somebody else's show, it's the same thing. We do the same damn thing. I go, wow, this is way too long. Who's going to read this? But there's some very cool stuff in there. Obviously, I think a lot of us know that you co-host the Ghost Education 101 with Philip Wyatt, who was on last week, and we love Philip. And as well as the Warren Files with Chris. So that is great stuff. And I like that you're into EVPs. I'm sorry, we got some cats and wires. Are an interesting mix of things going on under the table over here. Irene Takura says, hi, everyone. Hey, Irene. Haven't seen you in a while. From Tokyo, Japan. So yeah, I love that. Love the pun and being international here. We're talking to the world, Heather. So
That's always a good thing, though.
it certainly is. And I know we talked about this a little bit before when you were on the show, but how did you get your start in the paranormal? And notice mention of your grandfather as a
Right.
child.
I started seeing visions of my grandfather when I was a teenager, 16, 17. He would appear at the foot of my bed, sitting next to my bed, walking the hallway. And what kind of it piqued my interest is back then, the person had to have had some type of connection to the property, or they had, the belief was they had to die there in order to haunt the location. And this was a house that he had never been to. We purchased after he had passed, many years after he passed. So it was kind of just odd for him to be there. So that kind of piqued my interest, and I started going to the library and researching as much as I could about the field.
Excellent. Yeah, and that was back when we had to go to the library and
Yes.
use the Dewey Decimal System.
Exactly.
Kids today can't even finish entire words. This
Yeah.
gets me. I have kids. We have
kids that
And yeah,
abbreviate everything.
Everything
Adorbs.
is an
sus.
abbreviation. So it's like, wow. They skip right over that whole, let's go to the draws and
It's a different day.
use the Dewey Decimal System to look stuff up. We had limited information back then as well.
Exactly. So I relied a lot of it when we would take vacations. I would take the haunted tours that they would have, or, try to find, when I went to Gettysburg a lot, there was Mark Nesbitt, did a lot of book signings and lectures, and I was at every single one of them whenever we were in town.
Oh, that's really cool.
Mhm.
Nice. Were you into people like Hans Holzer as well, like growing up and reading?
Yep. All of those. Yeah.
Nice. Nancy Drew?
No, not really.
I had Hardy Boys.
Yeah.
I had Hardy Boys.
I'm not too proud to
I
admit.
was going to say, I like the Hardy Boys growing up.
There you go. That's awesome. I also had Encyclopedia Brown, but that's a whole nother thing. Trying to debunk his cases.
Scooby-Doo. No.
Scooby-Doo.
Yes,
Yeah,
Scooby-Doo.
Scooby-Doo is classics. So you're a certified EVP technician. What does that entail? And what do you think about what EVPs are and how they come about?
For that class, it was through the Institute of Metaphysical and Humanistic Science, where I got my PhD from. It was a series of courses that they offered, and if you completed them, and passed the test at the end, which was difficult because you had to hear what the instructors thought they heard. Because
Oh,
you know how with EVPs we all hear something different sometimes.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's trying to determine what was either really said in the EVPs, and once you finish that, they gave you from that particular institution their certification, and it went through everything. We learned how to analyze EVPs. We learned how to play around like in Audacity with the different feature settings, how to enhance, how to play backwards, and all of that stuff, and all the different. More or less, it ended up with an outline on if you think you hear an EVP, here's what you need to go through to determine if it really is an EVP.
Mm-hmm.
that's cool.
That's cool.
Yep.
What are some of the things that you do to determine whether it's somebody's belly growling and they want IHOP, or somebody whispered in the background another famous?
That's always the hardest part, and you have to rely on your fellow investigators to mark it if their stomach growls, and be honest.
Right.
Because there's an EVP we have that I swear sounds like what a pterodactyl would sound like. And we were in a dinosaur exhibit when we were doing the investigation.
Oh, wow.
Oh wow.
And nobody said anything, and everyone's like, no, my stomach didn't growl. And the digital voice recorder was at least 10 feet away from the nearest investigator. So you have to look at all the different factors. Like, that's why I always make a map when you're investigating of exactly where all the equipment is and where everybody was standing.
Mhm.
You make sure everybody marks whenever they move, talk, make any type of bodily function noise or whatever ends up happening while they're there. And then from there, you can kind of figure out if what you have is an EVP. And it's easier to determine the EVPs if you don't have the noise of the spirit boxes going off in the background.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
'Cause
Right.
that does, contribute to everything else with all that noise. It's ridiculous sometimes. Yes, we understand that.
I like what you said about it, people trying to decide what it said. We have an example of that we play sometimes, and I guess now's a good time.
Okay.
It's a sound clip that came from a spirit box, and depending if I tell you what it said, you'll probably hear it, and it's that kind of audio apophenia, I think is the word, right? Where you
Yes.
start to get paranoia about it. I'll tell you both things, and we'll just play it real quick. It either says Frank, Mike, Christopher, or it says bring light Lucifer. And that's two very diverse things, right? Or meanings. So let me play that.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of those things. I don't know how clearly that comes through the stream, but I love that example as a way of saying, this could be different things to different people.
That's like the Yanni and Laurel.
Right. The Yanni Laurel thing.
Yes.
Your ears can be tuned different ways. Females have ears that are tuned differently than males, that sort of thing. So you may hear something differently because you're going to hear a different range of frequencies, slightly different.
Yeah, and that's also why when you want to have other investigators listen to what you're listening to, don't tell them what you think you hear.
Yeah, right. Go blind, right? Just say, what does it sound like?
Yeah.
As we, as investigators, I think we have a tendency to put a lot of context into stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And Irene says, bring light to Lucifer. Is that what you heard? Right. So bring light Lucifer or Frank Michael Christopher. Frank Mike.
And I heard the Frank Michael Christopher.
Right. See, that's easy. It's easy. Irene also mentioned, she said, it's really hard being the only person who's into the paranormal and alone here. Being in Japan and Tokyo, no one wants to be part of a family of paranormal friends. It's more shunned than welcome these days. Well, we're glad you're part of this family,
yes,
Irene.
Thank you, Irene.
And we always love your presence on our shows. So we appreciate that. Thank you. Let me see. So we definitely want to get into the new book. And last time you were on, I think you were in the process of writing this book. It looks to be awesome. I think it's part of the Haunted America series, and it's Haunted Southern Nevada Ghost Towns.
Yeah, I actually just got my copies in.
Oh, really?
Oh, nice.
Congratulations.
I was so excited.
I bet. Yeah.
I bet. I know this has been in the works for a while. Do you want to tell us about it and some of the interesting places you visited?
What got me interested in, I've always been a writer, and I've always wanted to be an author. So it kind of fell into place after my family and I were asked to film Real Haunts Ghost Towns with motion picture video. It's a documentary about the different ghost towns in Southern Nevada. And we had done so much research on it. So it was almost like the book was already written between, just had to be pieced together because we, investigated Goldfield, Gold Point, Nelson. And the way they wanted to do this documentary is they wanted to look more at the history and how the history could fuel the paranormal activity. So it was more of a history documentary with a touch of paranormal attached to it. So, and then I reached out to History Press, which is part of Acadia Publishing, and said, hey, here's the book idea I have. They loved it. They told me to run with it, and I signed the contract just days after I pitched it to them, and it just all kind of fell into place. It also includes several photos that I've taken at the different ghost towns. It also includes stories from other paranormal investigators that I've talked to, as well as it has several. I try to make it as interesting as possible so it will still be entertaining. So it has a lot of narrative stories about some of the personal experiences I've had, including the experience I had when I went into a collapsed mine to do an investigation.
Wow. Now that's really interesting. You think about the concept of mining, you're basically going around like things like quartz and gold and metals and gems and crystals are going to be in this mine. Do you think that contributes to the phenomena?
It does. And there's a concept, it's not in this book, but it's going to be in another book that I'm doing coming up soon about, it's similar. You guys probably Bermuda Triangle, Alaska Triangle. There's also a Nevada Triangle where it spans and it covers Searchlight, which is just south of Vegas, out to Area 51, Goldfield, heads up to Reno, and then back down. And that's where the highest concentration of gold deposits, all the different crystal quartz and everything like that. And that's where tons of planes have crashed for no reason. I know Carol Lombard's plane, which is discussed in this book, crashed just off of Potosi Mountain. Okay. So Clark Gable spent his days waiting to hear about the search party at the Good Springs Saloon. And they're both reported to haunt that saloon. And it's just, there's a lot of things that are contributing to the activity. in addition to, could it be alien?
Right.
Right.
Of course.
Creating to it because you have Area
Of course,
51
yeah.
and then, the Nevada Triangle, just like the Bermuda Triangle, they feel it's alien related.
And you get these areas where you have just multiple phenomena. Now, we live inside and just outside of the Bridgewater Triangle,
Mhm.
which a lot of people talk about as well. And it's this sort of portal thing where you've got, UFOs, you've got Bigfoot, you've got a lot of ghosts, you've got unusual events occurring, phantom hitchhikers and the like. So
Exactly.
it sounds a lot like the Nevada Triangle.
Mhm.
And they do attribute this to the ground, the mineral content and whatnot of the metals and everything. That makes a lot of sense because of all that mining and the gold expansion, which is a pretty interesting history in itself, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
The Western expansion.
It's amazing how fast everything boomed and then how quickly everything died, especially when World War I hit, because they shut everything down to focus on, manufacturing stuff for the war instead of mining wasn't a priority at the time. So a lot of people, that was the beginning of the end for a lot of these towns.
Wow. I never really thought about that.
No.
That is what brought about the ghost towns, as it were. Wow.
Interesting. Wow.
Tell us about the mine and what that experience was like.
Well, we were invited up to investigate a mine, Florence Mine. It's owned by John Arick and his family. And we were filming a documentary, or not a documentary, a TV pilot with a production crew that does a lot of work with A&E and Discovery and all of that. And unfortunately, that got shelved because of COVID, because we filmed the February before COVID really hit. And when we were up there, we investigated the mine, the collapsed mine. And while we were in there, best place to ever use a spirit box, because it's 100% white noise and there's no contamination from radio waves in when you go to the bottom of a mine. There's no content. So if you get any voices on that thing, it's 100% legit because there's nothing there.
Right.
Wow.
Almost like being in a Faraday cage or something.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right? How deep are the mines?
The one we went into was it wasn't that deep. It was more like we went in on just a slow angle. So just a couple 100 feet.
Mm-hmm.
But then I've been in a couple others that were several stories deep. Wow. And everything like that. But this one we were in particular was a collapsed one. So it was, you went in the entrance, maybe the half of a length of a football field. We went back, but it might have only dropped 100 feet at that point. But the whole back area collapsed. And I went back all the way to that area where all the rubble was. And while back there, I completely lost all sense of where I was. Couldn't breathe. I heard screaming. I felt like I was being crushed. I started crying, and it was just awful. It was the worst experience I've ever had on an investigation. But once they got me out of there, I was maybe 5 feet away. I was perfectly fine.
Oh, wow. That's definitely trauma right there. Residual.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
What kind of things were you getting on the spirit box or EVPs?
EVPs.
Down there, we weren't getting anything. But the other thing with Goldfield is that it's also in the middle of nowhere and there's only one radio station. So you could still use the spirit box and, you barely pick anything up anyway. And we were getting men's voices talking. You couldn't really make out what they were saying, almost like they were mumbling and going on about their day.
Interesting.
Yeah. But we were also hearing the same voices with our, naked ears.
Sure.
So
okay.
we were there.
Wow. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just lives there. What were some of the other interesting places that you visited, and why do you think they were haunted?
We did Gold Point, and Gold Point was haunted. We firmly believe because we did our investigation near the Hangman's Noose. And in Gold Point, there's absolutely no radio frequencies whatsoever that we picked up at all. So we knew because with that one, because we were filming for the documentary, we did use a spirit box because it's really hard to use a digital voice recorder when you're trying to do something for a TV show. So the spirit box was our only way of, showing what was happening. And the minute we turned it on, it was like, everyone was like, "Who people? Let's go talk to them." We got hello, 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 hi, hello. Just all over the place. And it was just weird because it was at the Hangman's Noose, but that was where people hung out, was in the downtown area.
Sure.
And it just happened to be, it was their I don't want to say it was their entertainment, but it basically was.
Yeah, I think it probably was, right?
Yeah.
It's not like they had the internet.
Yeah, it was their social gathering point. It was just really interesting. And then when we were in Nelson, which was El Dorado Canyon Mines, we went to an abandoned mine that was just north of the town Nelson, south of the town of Nelson. And it was pretty deep, and they even warned us going in, because we didn't bring the tour guide in with us, but they did tell us, don't go past this point because it drops into nothing. So it was like there were bottomless pits throughout there. And when we went down there, we could see shadows, and we were all sitting still, and there was nobody outside. You can see shadows down the tunnels. There was, footsteps, popping noises, a whole bunch of interesting things happening down there.
That's definitely creepy.
Yeah.
Speaking of shadows, what are your thoughts on shadow people, right? This is a controversial topic, or multifaceted, we'll say, in the paranormal.
Yeah, that one it needs a lot of research on it, because I personally feel that shadow people are not so much shadow people, but not everybody can see, full-bodied apparitions, or we can't see them all the time. So it's a combination of things. We're not on the same frequency as that particular spirit is, so we see them in the form of a shadow, or they just don't have enough energy to manifest. So they do what they can and manifest in the best form they can.
Interesting. So do you think that they're really in a different dimension than us and trying to cross over and not fully able to do so, and therefore we see this sort of projection of them that comes across as a shadow?
I think that's also another possibility, because one theory I have is that we're on all multiple planes and all parallel universes, and except for the planes aren't exactly straight, they almost work like wave frequencies. And as our waves with ours meet up with the other dimension, that's when we can see the paranormal activity. And then it diminishes as we go past. So maybe we're seeing the shadow figures when we're not close together. And I know other theories are that the shadow figures are actually alien in nature and jumping through portals from one universe to another.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, of course, we've heard all these sort of things, but we don't really know. And it seems like it might be even situational. Sometimes it's like a ghost or an apparition, and sometimes it's something even more nefarious or
nefarious.
Yes, that is, maybe not so kind in nature, we'll say. I mean, a lot of people have, shadow figure hauntings and childhood experiences and that sort of thing, like Kristen over here, who saw them as a child.
It was terrible.
And was terrified of them.
They were very negative.
I know there's one shadow apparition that I used to see frequently. I don't see him anymore ever since we left Vegas. But we would investigate a local location, and it was our team, basically where our team held our monthly meetings, and we would do a practice investigation. The place would let us, stay after our meeting and do an investigation. And I kept seeing this, big guy, it almost reminded me of what you would expect Lenny of Mice and Men to look like, just big.
Mm-hmm.
And he was always, just watching from the corner, and lingering. And COVID hit, first before COVID hit, he did come and visit me after one of our investigations there. I woke up to him standing at the foot of my bed. And prior to that, I had a dream of him telling us never to come back to the location again. It was dangerous. But that didn't stop us. We went back, and we went back several times. Then COVID hit, and he would just appear in my kitchen and be like, it almost felt like hey, are you okay?
That's interesting. Yeah.
I haven't seen you in a while. Are you okay? So it was but I haven't seen him since we moved.
Wow. So I like the analogy with Lenny. I like that book. And I recall he was a big oafish kind of guy. It was a long time ago that
Just looking out for you.
Yeah.
And that's what he reminded me of. That was even when I saw him, that's what I thought of was the book.
Interesting. That would be the feeling too you would get from it.
Yeah.
What role do you think psychic impressions play in a paranormal investigation?
I think it's big, major. Because even with EVPs, there's tests going on and theories that the EVPs are actually not voices of ghosts or spirits. They're actually our thoughts of what we think the answer should be. Which is where the Estes method and all of those come into play, because you're not hearing the question being asked. So you don't know what the answer is. But let's say, we're in a group doing an investigation and my fellow investigator says, hey, what's your name? And all of a sudden we get, Sally on the recorder. Is it really a Sally, or was someone in the group thinking the name Sally at the time and their thoughts imprinted on the voice recorder?
Oh, I like that.
Interesting. Yes. And that
like
plays
that.
into other things too, like remote viewing in the subconscious, right? That our subconscious may know everything and know all the answers, so if it can hear it or someone's can, and maybe that's what's putting it out there, and it's not this discarnate spirit.
And there's also theories on that a lot of the spirits that we encounter are just self-manifestations. They're not really, ghosts of our, deceased loved ones. We want them there so badly that we've manifested them to be near.
Yeah, it's certainly a possibility. It's one I really, because I know it's like a personal choice, I don't want to believe in that.
Right.
But it's certainly within the realm of possibility.
Yep.
Certainly there were poltergeist cases that were documented by parapsychologists that involve like teenage girls in particular and their hormones, and they were creating this phenomena, psychokinesis in the house, and things are flying around and that sort of thing. It seemed to be attributed to one person, and then there are cases where it's not.
Right.
So it's hard to say exactly what is going on.
And that's why we need to have more people in this field who are dedicated to researching the why. The why and the how, not just does it happen, but why does it happen? And we're never going to get there if we don't if we don't bond together, get together and come up with some set of way of doing this. I mean, there's too many. I'm all for going to that haunted location and learning about the history and, doing an investigation because it's practice. But if that's all you do, this field is never going to grow.
Yeah, we agree. We're about the hows and the whys.
The hows and whys. No, the wows and highs.
The wows and the highs, Kristen. Yeah. We were talking about this. The wow.
No, I was not drinking.
No. Just a slip. But it was kind of funny. And we agree with you. We say that a lot. The hows and the whys. Like, why do these things occur? We don't feel like the field knows all the answers. There's a lot of theories and hypotheses being thrown around. We need better ways of testing it out to get to the truth,
and we've gone far beyond proving paranormal activity occurs. We know it occurs. There's no doubt about it. So why are we still trying to prove that it exists?
Right. We agree with you.
We have a question out there from Lorianne Sweet. Hello, Lorianne. How are you doing today? She asks, do you think any shadow people are sometimes human created by negativity and a repeated buildup of negative actions?
It could be.
Or other figures, actually.
Yep. And that could be the reason why they're a shadow, is because they're all the negatives of what we think and what we manifest.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Leigh.
Okay. So it creates almost a residual type thing that can take on a life of its own. I think we're getting into the land of Carl Jung and the idea of, a collective consciousness or unconsciousness out there, however you want to put it. And the idea of like an egregore, that you thought could create a thing that could maybe live on its own.
Yeah, and actually, it just reminded me of another theory that's out there too, is that, does paranormal activity wear away over time?
Good question.
So is it one of those things where, are we seeing them as a shadow figure because they're an entity from the caveman age? And they've just worn away so much that that's all we see.
Right. And perhaps legends keep things alive. Like you could take Lizzie Borden, as an example, or something like the Conjuring house that's out here. And people are just have such a belief in it. Lizzie Borden, that was a long time ago. People still congregate there and, think they see members of her family or talk to them often. And it isn't the belief systems of the people. If in 200 years, will they still be talking about Lizzie Borden, and will it still be haunted? That's a good question.
Right. Yeah. And like with Gettysburg, we have all the reenactments that occur there. Are the reenactments what's keeping the activity happening?
Sure.
Fueling it in some way.
Yes.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah. That's a great theory. I like thinking about things like that. And in these the ghost towns, what do you think might be keeping those alive?
Well, when the ghost towns were most active in the heyday, and when they were, booming, it was the place to be. It was, they would have social gatherings, they would have parties, like the Goldfield Hotel, was this luxurious, the luxurious of the luxurious. And the Goldfield High School, they actually were the only public high school in the state of Nevada at the time to have a full-size basketball court besides the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, UNLV.
Okay.
So they were only the school of its size to actually have an indoor basketball court that was full-size and not just partial. So these towns had the money and they were able to do the best of the best. And in addition to, they were comfortable there. That was where they were their happiest, before their lives were torn apart, but forced to move. And then you also had the Wild West mentality. Everybody there, these towns became very lawless. Like Nelson, the sheriff was 2 hours away, and he didn't come unless there was a dead body. And half the time, he didn't even come for that.
Oh my goodness!
So they could do their own thing, and
pretty much
that leaves a lot of residual energy behind. That feels paranormal. Everything from happy to sad to, just they made a major imprint. Like there's talk of Virgil Earp settled in at Goldfield, and Wyatt would come visit him a lot. And there's reports of people seeing at least Virgil because he had died in Goldfield and he loved it there. He was the sheriff. He lived his final days there. He was so happy being there. They would see, with the hat and the big mustache that he had walking down the street to this day.
Oh, that's really cool. And I wanted to ask you that if there were any of those sort of tombstone-esque characters like Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp, are there legends of seeing them and that sort of thing in these towns?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no one's really reported seeing Wyatt, but they have reported seeing Virgil, and it's really interesting, the stories that you hear from the townspeople.
Sure. It had to be an exciting time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and why wouldn't you want to stay? Spend your afterlife where you were once happy.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, that is interesting. Gail Heisen, hello. Gail says hello. Hi guys, cooking and listening. Hugs.
Hi, Gail.
Hugs back, Gail.
We miss you.
How are you doing? We miss you. Gotta catch up soon. And she's a friend of ours in the show as well. And she has a great show of her own called Small Medium at Large. So do check that out, folks. These ghost towns, how far out do they go? Do they go all the way through to like California? Did they kind of stop in Nevada?
They're all over the place from what I've discovered. I mean, you have all of Nevada, you have Arizona, New Mexico has a ton of them. California, right. Calico is one of the most famous haunted ghost towns. And the Haunted America series book, I believe it's Brian Clune. He wrote Haunted Calico as part of the series, and that's a really good book. And then the one thing I found interesting, and I want to say it's third or fourth in my queue of books that I'm working on right now for History Press, is Haunted Florida Ghost Towns.
Oh,
because Florida has over 250 ghost towns.
Oh,
okay. And I didn't realize that until one day I stumbled upon it, and I was like, "Oh,
that's interesting." I know Florida has a lot of like old history because of Columbus and that sort of thing, and people coming in there and invading. And I see your computer is just.
Thank you so much, because there's so many comments right now. We've got Doug in there. I'm sorry.
Yes, folks. Kristen's having trouble moderating because her computer is basically on fire. Missed us talking about that earlier.
Yeah.
We will try to get to everyone's comments.
Sorry, Heather.
But yeah, super interesting. Like Florida has all sorts of things, and ghost towns are a subject that I'm just not. I don't know a lot about. I find them interesting and fascinating, but I don't know exactly where they are. And I'm very interested in your book coming out, so I can learn a little bit more about it. And just to reiterate the name, it's going to be called Haunted Southern Nevada Ghost Towns, part of the Haunted America series, and you can pre-order that now on Amazon. It's due out August 22nd, so pretty soon.
And what I did, and Chris McKinnell wrote the foreword, and he doesn't do that often. So I'm real lucky that he did that. But the first two chapters in the book, real quick, just they talk about what makes a ghost town, and then why are ghost towns haunted, before it dives deep into the different towns throughout Nevada.
Great. Well, that sounds like really good information and something we want to sign up for and learn more about. We love American history, and we feel like what we're taught growing up is just so incorrect. We've done a lot of research into like Native American history and indigenous people of America, and the stuff especially in our time, that schools taught us about Thanksgiving and stuff is just so far from the truth. It's not even funny. It's actually extremely sad. As well as other cultures. Quaker culture has been interesting to us because of a particular cemetery we like that happens to be part of the Society of Friends, which is the Quakers. And their history is very interesting. They were persecuted much like witches were here by the Mass Bay colonies and stuff like that. We love the history aspect too. Besides those hows and whys, like throw us some good history and we're all over it. The true story about what happened.
Yeah. And I tried my best, because I'll even say in here, repeatedly, because when it comes to history, you're only limited to what resources you can find.
Right.
So it's like, because when I was interviewing one guy, he's like, well, I hope you get the town correct, because there's a lot of false stories out there. So you'll see in my book, a lot of times I'll say paranormal investigators claim. So I'm not saying that this is what I found out. This is what others claim to happen.
Right.
Because I'm so afraid to get the history wrong.
Right. Sure, of course.
But you can only go off of what other people say and what you have access to. I mean, you can dig for days, months and years, and still not find the truth.
What do you think are the biggest misconceptions of ghost towns?
That all ghost towns are haunted. First of all, because there's a chapter in the back that has all the other ghost towns listed that don't have paranormal activity.
Oh, so, that's interesting.
And that all ghost towns were Wild West savage-like. Because of course, Nelson, Gold Point got to that point a little bit, but Goldfield, even today, Goldfield, even though it's a functioning ghost town, there's probably a couple hundred residents that still are behind, if there's even that many anymore. And it still operates today. The Esmeralda County Courthouse is there, or the courthouse is there. I'm like drawing a blank. They're all blending together now. And it was the luxury of luxury, that particular town. It wasn't Wild West. It wasn't all men like Nelson was. And it was just very interesting how these towns just aren't what people would think. They're not what you expect. You would expect
Hollywood. Hollywood usually portrays them like that.
Right. Sure. Yeah. And not all of them were. Some of them were, but not all of them. And that's what I think a lot of people get wrong about these ghost towns is that, or why would I want to go there? It's abandoned. Well, because the history.
Right. Exactly. I like seeing the structures and, I'm glad they're still standing and, the wood doesn't deteriorate. I imagine the weather has something to do with that. I don't think those structures would survive in New England as well. A lot of them, so they look rather loosely put together.
They are.
But, Hollywood would be the other factor besides, school history, right? That influences what people's perceptions are about these towns. Interesting that some of them weren't savage, that it was just normal, happy folk moving westward, trying to find gold for the most part.
Yeah. And like the Bonnie Springs area was just basically a stopping point before, and it was still a stopping point that people went to before they tore it down.
Wow. Interesting. Gail had asked what city in California. So what was the California side of that? Calico. Okay. All right. Yeah. So definitely more of these things than I think the average person knows. Maybe if you're from that area, you may have a deeper insight to, how much there are. I know I've seen some on TV that are sort of like museums in a way, like people stop in and they're able to tour the buildings and are any of these that you talk about, are they related to some of the places people like the public can go and visit and get a tour of?
Nelson, Nevada is actually El Dorado Canyon. They the town is owned now by a couple that used to live in Boulder City. So they've gone through, they've fixed the place up, and it's one of the most popular and most photographed places in the state. They have their sons do tours of the mine, and it's just I love going there. It's actually the cover was taken there.
Okay, very good.
And it's just a really, really cute, fun town. The owners have photos that date back who knows how far, and they're more than happy to walk around the town with you and talk about it, and they live there full time and just run the place. Then if you go to Goldfield, you can go to the Goldfield Emporium is still open. That's a cute little, almost like just a quick mom and pop type shop to go into for souvenirs. Then the Goldfield Historical Society does tours. I know Goldfield High School was closed to the public unless you paid to do the paranormal tours in the night, but that is now up for sale.
Okay.
So I'm not sure. And Gold Point,
good retirement plan.
Yeah. Gold Point's owned by 3 people, and they all monitor the town themselves, and they have the old mining cabins that you can stay in, overnight, but you got to share an outhouse. There's no plumbing or anything like that to this town. And you get a TV with a VCR. That's how back they are on it, because there's barely enough electricity to run the town. But you can stay there overnight, and that is supposed to be the best place in the state of Nevada because it's so dark to see the stars.
Oh, beautiful.
Must be gorgeous.
Yeah, it must be really nice in that regard. We really should take a road trip out there. I would love to see some of this. Are there towns that are like off the beaten path where you would have to like get in a pickup truck and drive off the main road through the desert to get to, and sort of like an urban exploration type thing?
There's several of those. A couple I've talked about in the book. I know Mount Potosi, where Carol Lombard's playing, and her plane is still there.
Oh, wow.
The plane crash is still there. And Berlin is another one. You can still get there by a road, but it's just one road in, one road out.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think, trying to remember, there's a couple others that I can't remember off the top of my head, but there's several. And there's several that I didn't include in the book. The further you go north in Nevada, the more isolated the ghost towns are.
Oh, that's interesting. And why is that? They were just abandoned and they didn't build other towns around them?
I think so, because there's not as much. Most of the population is either in Reno, Carson City, or Las Vegas.
Yeah, Vegas, certainly.
In those areas.
But even I know when everybody knows, when Vegas started, it was just in the middle of the desert, right? There was nothing there before,
right?
Or seemingly, and it just built up over time.
Mm-hmm.
Fascinating. So, and your present day, besides doing this, have you been on other investigations as of late?
Not recently, because we've moved and just getting settled back here in Florida. And then I go, actually a week from Monday, I go for my knee surgery. So I kind of really haven't started any projects until I get that done.
Oh, well, I hope that goes well.
Yes.
I've had a lot of pain in my own knee. I'm eventually going to have to get to the doctor and have them look at it so they can give me some kind of bad news.
Yeah.
It's never fun, right?
No, it's like I was on a radio show last night, and I was talking about how in Real Hunt's Ghost Towns, there's a scene where we're climbing out of the mine in Nelson.
Mm-hmm.
And when the cameras weren't rolling, I was literally crawling out of the mine because I couldn't do it. And you could see, because you could tell that something was going on because I was just covered. My black pants were covered in dirt. And it's once those cameras stopped rolling, I was like crawling my way out of that mine. And that was like, okay, it's time to get my knees done. And March of 2021 is when I had my right knee done. They did a knee replacement on that knee last year, and now they're doing it on the left knee.
Wow.
Does that one feel much better now that they did that?
Yes, it took a while, and it still is achy because they said it could take up to a year and a half for a full recovery. But I definitely can notice the difference between the two knees now.
Oh, good.
Well, that's good.
That's better.
I'm glad to hear that. We had another question from Lori Ann. She asked, when you go to these ghost towns and investigations, do you ever have spirits follow you home?
I haven't, but I know some people have. I'm very peculiar, and the spirits know that. I go into these investigations fully protected. I have a pentacle that I wear. I have crystals in my pockets. We go in fully protected, and we do the typical speech, thank you for letting us visit with you. As long as you don't follow me home, we'll do our best to come back and see you in the future.
and the same thing too.
Yeah. And then my entire house is protected. Nothing negative can get, at least I don't think, but I haven't had anything negative ever follow me home into the house. I did have on an investigation when I was still living in Vegas, something followed me home.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got to the front door, I closed the front door, locked it, did my typical routine, took all my clothes off, because we knew it was a negative investigation to begin with. So I wanted to make sure that I cleansed everything before going any further into my house. And I wasn't 5 feet away from the front door when it sounded like someone took their fist and punched the front door.
Really?
Oh my goodness.
And when I looked out the peephole, I would have seen someone running away. And there was nobody there.
Nobody there.
Mm-mm.
Nobody
And
there.
that's really scary.
Yeah.
We would be
So
pretty scared.
something was mad it couldn't get into my house.
Yeah,
No.
so you feel like those protections that you put up in your house actually work. Now you are the co-founder, and your bio mentions you're co-founder of the Witches Paranormal Society, and you've got some cool moon-shaped mirrors behind you that look pretty witchy. We talk a lot about the science, and then we have things like witchcraft and our psychic abilities to also play a role. So where did that part of you come about, and what steps do you take to do those sort of protections?
Well, I want to say it was towards right about when I started high school. I was raised Roman Catholic, but when my grandmother passed, we ended up not really going to church that much anymore. So, and I just didn't like the idea, and there's nothing wrong with it, but I just didn't like the idea of being told you do something wrong, you're going to hell. It was black or white, no forgiveness, no nothing. It was, and you have to do this. And I just didn't like the idea of the organized religion aspect of it. So I started researching, and I picked and chose what worked for me. So I do a combination of green witchery and kitchen witchery because I love the earth, the crystals, and then the herbs and all of that stuff. So I kind of do what works for me. And a friend of mine, Marissa, she founded Sin City Witches that I've been a part of for a long period of time. And then she came to me and she's like, you know what? We have a lot of people interested in the paranormal. Let's start this. And we've started it, and then it kind of fizzled out for a little bit, and we started again, and it fizzled out, but we do have plans. We're going to be doing a whole bunch of stuff, including videos, training classes, and a whole bunch of other things coming up after my knee surgery.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And I like that you're eclectic like that.
Eclectic.
We're also
Very
eclectic, and we like those things as well, and participate in them. When you do a banishing or a protection of your house, per se, do you use things like crystal grids, or can you tell us how you do that, or how you shake these spirits off if they do?
I kind of do a combination. I do have 4 quartz crystals, and they're in the shape of a pentacle, the 5 points of the pentacle, with the top point facing north. And that's the first thing in any home I've moved into, the last thing of any home I move out of to leave. Then I also have herbal protection jars made with rosemary, thyme, and marjoram over all of our door frames. And
Nice.
then around the perimeter, because we are in a townhouse now and we have a back patio. Around the perimeter, this came from Reverend Sean Whittington.
Yes.
He sent me some blessed sea salt. It was a combination of white, black, pink, and red sea salt that he blessed and sent to me. And that's sprinkled all around our back patio. And if he hadn't sent that to me, I would have probably done something similar myself anyway.
Salt for a long time has been thought of, as a barrier between the living and the dead, and things that are negative, and keeping them on the outside. People put salt on their windows.
Yeah, and I didn't use it in this house, but you can also use cascarilla to bless the different doors.
What is that? I'm not familiar with that.
Hold on a second. Sorry.
That's-
They were old from last night. Oh, okay. Sorry. I put them in the bag. They're still, sorry.
Okay. We understand. Habits.
No worries. So what is castorilla? What is that?
It's crushed eggshell.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Sure.
Yes.
I think that may even have like more voodoo roots or hoodoo roots.
Yeah, it's from voodoo backgrounds, but it's crushed eggshell, and it's believed to protect whatever is around it, just like it protects the yolk and the baby chick as it grows.
Interesting. Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. So
Never heard it called that though, but yeah.
yeah, I didn't realize it was called that. But yeah, that's super. I like that you have this. What sort of psychic things are you into, and how does that work?
Psychically, I don't really think I am, even though a lot of people say I am, just because I can pick up on things that others can't. But it's not anything that I really pushed
Is it a
for.
sort of thing where you get a feeling about something, but you just think it's a feeling because you're the science part of your mind?
It
Inside
could
of
be.
kind of a left-right brain fight?
It could be a combination of both. I know when I walk into investigations, I can tell from the minute I step over the threshold, oh, this is going to be a good one, or this isn't going to be a good one. I go places like if I'm at, let's say, Disney World, and in a big crowd of people, I'll just start crying for no reason. So, I've been told that's the empath in me.
Absolutely.
And I can see spirits and hear spirits when others can't. But I always just thought that was part of being a paranormal investigator.
Yeah, and that's an interesting topic in
We
itself.
talk
Let's talk a little bit about that real quick. And certain people seem to get more data. For some reason, we don't want to say they got superpowers or magical abilities, but it seems tied into the sort of psychical phenomena. What are your thoughts on that? Do you find that people on your teams, like they're like, oh, these people, they always, seem to get something? Do you have people like that, or do you get that feeling, or
Sometimes I do believe that there are psychics out there that do really good work. But again, like with the paranormal field, there's too many out there that give it a bad name. And I think if it's done right, it works. But unfortunately, not everybody knows how to do it the right way. Like they overfeed their psychic with information before ever going on an investigation. When I would bring one on an investigation, I don't even give them the address. I pick them up. So that way there's no slight chance that they just got curious and Googled the address.
Sure.
So it's a whole bunch of different things. And it's not anything that I've really used because I like the more science base to it. But it is interesting to see science line up with the psychic abilities.
Absolutely. That's like the best data right there. In remote viewing, they call that front loading, right? Where you're kind of giving the person who's going to do the viewing too much information or some clue, something they could draw from a context. And then, of course, their drawings may appear that going in that direction, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, very similar thing.
Real quick, Lori Ann Sweet said, what is blinking in your mirror? And I'm going to guess it's your ceiling fan.
It is. I didn't even notice that.
Yeah. I saw it when we first came on. I'm like, oh, that's different. That's good. It's fine.
Yeah, depending on what you're watching on, it may look like a ceiling fan, or it might just look like a demon. We don't know.
It's an orb.
It's an orb. Oh, everything.
It's an orb. That's right. That's even better. I like that. How about that? Thoughts on orbs? Always a controversial subject.
Exactly. If you don't, for me personally, just because there's so many possibilities for the orb, unless you see it with your naked eye giving off its own light source, I don't even bother.
Yeah. No, how about when
it's not even worth arguing.
Right. I mean, there's so many dust orbs out there and moisture, and it's amazing what people will say post in social media sometimes. But yeah, car lights are a thing. That's where I was going to go with the ghost lights. The ghost lights is a kind of a different phenomena, but still kind of under that orb category. What do you think of ghost lights?
I think it's possible, but like I had said earlier, it's similar to orbs. It would have to produce its own light. It's not reflective. It would have to produce its own light. It would have to shine the light off of nearby surfaces in order for it to be, authentic. And it's like, we were in Vegas and one of our friends had shared a video that someone had made and put on YouTube. And they were in the pathway from McCarran Airport. And they were like, oh my goodness, look at all those UFOs lined up. And they're just hovering. Well, depending on where you're at in comparison to the airport, the lights do look like they're hovering.
Yeah.
Sure. I would imagine, because you have a lot of flatlands, obviously, right? When you're out in the desert, you got all these long roads, and a plane would appear to be lower to the ground than people would expect. And of course, if they're moving away from you or toward you, it would just appear to be hovering.
Right. And we were watching the video, and I couldn't help but laugh. I'm like, it's like we see that out of our, bedroom window every night.
Right. Yes. Take it for granted. But somebody else might look at that and go, oh my God, there it is.
Yeah.
Area 51.
And it was in the direction of Area 51 where they were filming at. So it was interesting.
Have you had any ufology related data come across in your investigations or experiences?
No, I haven't. No, not yet. Not yet. I'm still
Not
trying.
Still trying. Oh, okay.
Do you feel that the fields are more related than people?
Oh,
would
yeah.
do? Yeah.
Yeah.
Assume, I guess, would be the right word.
Under the umbrella of paranormal, basically. But what about let's see, interdimensional beings? I would say that's definitely, would that be to you?
It would be, and that falls under the shadow people.
Okay.
The shadow people could go from, as one of the theories for them, as well as the different aliens.
And Bigfoot, for that matter. And crypto.
Bigfoot.
Have you had any crypto zoological encounters out there?
Yeah. Nope.
I get that word out.
Nothing, huh?
No, we haven't had a lot of cryptids either. We're not big cryptid people, but I have a bigger belief in them from other people at this point. That they might exist. There might be stuff out there.
And we're gonna go footing soon.
And we're gonna go footing this summer, maybe. Have you ever been footing?
No. I don't like camping, so that's not for me.
So that one's out, right?
Yeah,
it's out.
Nope.
Yeah. Well, bring lots of off.
Yeah.
I like hiking, but I got to be back at that Holiday Inn by nightfall.
Oh, goodness.
I like that. We kind of feel the same way. We think it's, I don't want to discount it. I think people are probably discovering something, and its origins are kind of unknown,
Yeah.
There's an argument though with that though.
Yeah.
There's an argument that they're either interdimensional or they are some kind of,
flesh and blood creature that
Yes.
just, evades humanity. But then we go, why didn't we find the dead ones? And as well, they take care of their dead, or who knows? We do discover new creatures all the time. But they're usually things like weird crabs in the bottom of the ocean, right?
Coelacanth.
Not a Bigfoot looking in through your window, coming through your backyard.
And as big as they are, why haven't we seen them before?
Yeah, we don't see them as often.
As often as it, yeah.
It's tough. We live in this age where we have such good technology that, like UFOs, Bigfoot, big feet, or whatever, can be faked so easily. And my YouTube feed is filled with all kinds of fake stuff. I hate to say it. I'm sorry. I watched some of this paranormal stuff on there, and it's just like way too much activity, and they're like putting together mini horror movies and filing it under, this really happened in an investigation, and it did.
Right. Yeah.
So how do you discern? Like, what do you do yourself, like, to discern, the what, for lack of a better word, what's bullshit from reality?
It's a tough call, because it's one of those things where, it is possible to get a full body apparition, because we have one that we captured in Goldfield. But if you have to zoom in and do too much editing to the photo, it's not there. But then also, if you zoom in when you're analyzing it, the first thing I do is I check the EXIF information first of all. And if that's missing, I tell them, I need the original photograph, or I'm not going to go any further, because it's not worth my time. Because that tells you if it's been altered, what camera was used, what data was taken on, and all of that information. And then we'll zoom in on the photo where the entity supposedly is. And 9 times out of 10, when someone sends me a photo, once you're zoomed in, you can tell the pixels go in a different direction where the entity that they say is there. And that's a dead giveaway. It's been altered.
It's been photoshopped or something.
Yeah, we see a lot of that.
Yeah, we watch entire videos. Wouldn't name names, but just
we're
really, and you can almost see the fishing line on the cabinet, pulling the cabinet doors open.
Yeah,
like
the Paranormal Activity movie, which is amazing.
It's kind of like the rock that went flying at the Goldfield Hotel, and I'm not going to name names of what team did that.
Yeah, I think I saw that,
but it made it onto a major TV show.
Yeah, it was like a rock, a brick, or something. Yeah. I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think so too.
Laurie Ann Sweet says, or flesh and blood, going back to the Bigfoot creature that manipulates the portals between the dimensions. Well, yeah, maybe that's what it does, and has the ability to do that. Like, ghosts or spirits, seemingly do, or some of these other entities, whatever label we want to give them. What do you think about those labels? Everybody likes that D word, right? Speaking of that rock flying, do you feel like it's overused? Do you think some of these things might be aliens, angels, or the actual T-bird? Or are they all the
It's
same thing?
way overused because in all the years that I've been researching, and even with working with the Warren Foundation, I've never come across, anything that was demonic. And and we did have one that our other team members, before I started the team I have right now, they were all like, "Oh, it's a demon. We need to go in there. We need to do X, Y, and Z." So we went in there thinking it was demonic when it was just an asshole human. Sorry for my language.
No,
But
you're
that-
welcome to do that.
That's essentially what it was. It was just he was a jerk in life and he was a jerk in the afterlife, but it
really-
wasn't a demon.
That's what a lot
and
of
that's
people
what a
say.
lot of people attribute the D word to.
Right.
The demon to.
Yeah.
It turns
If
out-
something negative happens, it's a demon, and it's
Yeah,
not.
it's
It's
automatic.
just bad luck, or a spirit trying to get your attention.
Yeah, a
Yeah,
lot
or
of
like
people
you
say
said-
that your personality may carry over into the
Exactly.
afterlife, and if you're an asshole here, you're going to be an asshole there.
Yep.
But maybe you've got some superpowers now, and you're not always seen. They're kind of like the Invisible Man's.
Right. The fly on the wall.
Right. That's very interesting. I noticed in the front of this, we were talking about spirit boxes. Are you skeptical of spirit box data because of the ability to get a lot of apophenia?
Yes and no. I do use them. I have them, but I won't use them for a residential investigation because it's not true evidence of a paranormal haunting. Because, like with orbs, there's too many possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I have used them, especially when we do, like filming for the TV shows and the documentaries. And then when you host an event, it's real hard to explain to people, hey, use your digital voice recorder and you'll get your evidence when you get home after you've paid $100 to attend this event. You can't
Sure.
do that. So,
Yeah.
and we've used them at the different events that we have hosted or that we've participated in. And we've actually gotten some really good evidence on it, but it's not evidence that could be used to back up anything for a residential.
And it's like you want other stuff too. I think a lot of teams, and it's happened to us as well. We start to focus on it because we've had, such good data from them.
Yeah.
But we also know that there's this, the elephant in the room is, hey, of course there's going to be words and noise, and you know what I mean? Is radio stations, right? And we try to work around that, but we feel like a lot of it that as multi-syllabic and forms sentences, and we get into that and our highly relevant answers that are very clear gives us more validation for its use. And I like it. I think one of the things that one of the theories we postulate around is that they use these sort of things as like a palette, to communicate. And it seems to be harder if there's nothing there. We would rather have a class A EVP than a good spirit
Right.
box session,
Of course.
but they're harder to get. And then I imagine from the spirit point of view, it must be harder to do. I mean, I think that sometimes they use things like our breath to create the EVPs, and that's probably why there are so many whispery ones. But it's clearly a word. Like, where did that noise come from? I've heard we've captured some data where there were things in the environment like birds that seem to make part of the communications that they were trying to do.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a painter's palette is how I think of it.
Right.
That they'll use it. But like you said, there are radio stations, there are things, there are car ads flying through, and that sort of thing. That's really not going to be
The thing I
relevant,
like about it, though, when we do get good information is when you ask them something and it repeats.
Mhm.
Like I had this, and like we were at my house one night and somebody ran their fingers through my hair, and I said, who ran their fingers through my hair? And you hear 5 or 6 Pauls did it. First said, not me. And it was on this box. And then it said Paul, different voices.
They
And
keep
how
hearing the
do you
name
get
come back, the
that?
same name, right? Without anything really in between it, just Paul,
Right.
Paul.
So it's those kinds
think
of
those are like
examples that we
The good data.
Yeah.
So we like the ITC, but at the same time, really, totally also agree with 100% that it's not infallible. And,
Right.
certainly, I don't know.
No, we're actually, I have, it was an old mob hangout. It used to be a very popular bar, and the boss wanted us to take their employees around on a tour so that way they wouldn't be afraid of the spirits that were there, because there was tons of one of the most haunted locations on the Vegas Strip.
Wow.
And so we were taking them around, and I had a group with me, and they loved the spirit box. They just absolutely loved it. And so we were using it throughout most of the investigation. And all of a sudden something grabbed my butt, which is what would have happened, you know, in a mobster bar.
Right.
And I was like, who just grabbed my butt? And you get, I did, he did.
There you go.
There you go.
On the spirit box. And it was like,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah.
So it does
You're
work.
letting a little more credence to that, because now you've got the two things.
Mhm.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
do like to grab butts. That's happened to
Mhm.
her. It has not happened to me.
Times.
No one has grabbed my butt.
But it
Paranormal.
was just weird. I was backed up against a wall, and it was like, there's nobody behind me.
I don't know. I personally, I guess I don't have enough to grab. They just
Yes,
they
you
don't
do.
bother.
Quiet. Don't get me started.
That is funny. Have you found that that's a common thing? A lot of people do talk about being kind of groped in.
Mhm.
That's on investigations. Do you find that some of these ghosts are a little dirty? Are they trying to get a reaction from the people, or I don't know. What are your thoughts on it?
I think it's, you know, again, goes to with what they were like in life, what they were used to in life. And, you know, they could be bored. I really think, I do believe that some ghosts do have a good sense of humor.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of things that they do is to screw with us.
Right. Get a
I
reaction.
mean, what else are you going to do in the afterlife?
You're right.
Yeah. What do you think about the idea of, you know, the people talk about the afterlife, go into the light, and yet they have these earthbound spirits that seem to haunt us. Do you ascribe to those hypotheses as well? Do you think some just they go to heaven, or whatever we want to call it? We don't need a religious label, just some light, whatever. And some are just for whatever reason, maybe we're tormented or scared to go cross over, stay here and mess with the living.
It's a whole bunch of different things. I mean, again, we have free will in the afterlife. So why are we going to stick around in one location? So do they really stick around in one location? Do they travel to different locations? And, you know, do they even stay on Earth? You know, are there different, you know, do we go to another dimension, or can we, without our physical bodies, are we able to transport between these dimensions a lot easier?
Yeah. That's what I think
Mhm.
is going on with it. I think it opens up things. I don't know if you've had any experience with astral projection or like lucid dreaming, where
Yep.
you know you're very aware of what's going on, and really anything you think of is possible. There seems to be no time, you know, and that's the thing, right?
Yeah.
People talk about with the spirit world. Maybe there's no time on that side.
Right.
You know, that's
Linear.
a man-made concept. This linear time.
Right.
Oh, this has been fascinating. So
Yes.
tell us when the book is coming out again, and where should people go to see it and find you?
Okay, it is Haunted Southern Nevada Ghost Towns. It's coming out August 22nd, and it's from History Press. You can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, and you can also go to your local bookstore to pre-order it. I know a couple people who have gone to their local bookstores and pre-ordered it. And then you can find me at Dr. Heather Leigh on Facebook, or Exploration Paranormal. And a lot of events coming up. We are planning an event. I know Chris McKinnell will be joining me, along with Bill Slevin from the Warren Foundation. We'll be at Phantasm here in Orlando at the end of August. As long as my knee is working and cooperating, I'll be there as well. And then Chris and I are going to be hosting an event with Flumery Promotions in September up in Virginia Beach.
Oh, nice.
That's great. That's great. And I've got your explanation. Can't talk. Yeah, that's great. Just be a podcaster and not be able to talk. Exploration Paranormal site up, which is a very cool site. I was checking that out.
And that website, we are in the process of updating it. We'll be adding to the blog, as well as I'm going to be having an events tab that we'll be adding, because I am partnering with Flumery Promotions to do events, not just for the Warren Legacy Foundation, but I'm partnering with Ray, who's the founder of that company, to do other events with his other people he represents, such as Brandon Alvis and Mustafa and Daryl and Chelsea and all of those guys.
That's
nice. That's
wonderful.
awesome. That's awesome. Well, congratulations.
Yes.
Congratulations on the new book.
I
And
know. We can't
sounds like
wait.
you got a lot of great stuff coming down the pike. We definitely look forward to it. We love your show. When is Ghost Education 101 on, and when is the Warren Files on?
Both are on a break right now until I get back from my knee surgery. We were taking a break in August anyway, because that's our break time. But we are, I know, on August 3rd, I think. Yeah, August 3rd, Philip's going to be hosting Lloyd Arbach for a presentation. And then after that, we won't be returning until the Warren Files comes back on September 7th. And then Ghost Education 101 will be back the opposite week.
Great.
Awesome. Well, we look forward to that.
Yes, and we'll be privately messaging you, make sure you're doing okay after your surgery. So
thank you.
We've enjoyed
Welcome.
this. Stick around. We're
Yes.
just going to wrap things right up, and we'll be right with you.
Okay.
So, hey, folks, have a great week. I know our schedule ourselves has been a little erratic. We're working on some projects, and things are slowly, and I mean slowly, moving along. But
yes,
you got to keep at it, or it just goes away, right? So, we will be back, I believe, next Thursday. I believe we have Dr. Michael Lynch on for the Dark Horse Paranormal podcast, and we will see you guys then.
Hi, Bob.
And hey, Bob Burnell, how are you doing? And thank you, everybody. Lorianne, thank you for your questions. Gail, Robert Honings, Kimmy, everybody that joined today. Irene Takura, nice to see you again.
Debbie
Wallace Hagen. You guys have a great weekend. Enjoy yourselves, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.